middle.
Nice.
I always feel like that skit.
I know, it's like opening the gates.
I'd open the gates.
It's like, yeah, hey.
Carolina Weed, curator at Artfare. I'm here hosting our regular Thursday evening live studio visits and virtual interviews. And, you know, when we're lucky enough to be in the studio, like we are with Ruth Freeman tonight.
Hello.
Hey. We're able to get a little better idea of the space you're working in, as well as, you know, we get to do a little screen sharing as well, some of the work you have worked on in the past and some of your installation shots and shows. But I'm really delighted to have you here today, Ruth Freeman.
Thank you. I'm glad to be a part of this fun little group of talks.
Yeah, I know they're sometimes I feel like, wow, they're really long, but I think we're gonna be able to fill it out because your work is really mesmerizing. I think, to me, you know, a lot of times you could use words like safe, or maybe that's not the best way to describe the work.
Maybe these days it is.
These days, right? You know, the abstractions and the way that they're just presenting themselves in a real vibrant palette and layering. And as you know, we kind of already talk, when we talk about your work, this digital versus analog coupling and process. And this work you have behind you, you've kind of got an in-process shot going on there.
Yep, over, let's see, my mirror. Yeah, here. This is a finished piece, which I'll get into in a little bit about the story behind that one. But yeah, it's actually great to be in my studio because, you know, it's been a little while since we've all been able to go back to our lives, a little, you know, halfway, but there was a little bit of hesitation over here where I am. I'm in Newburgh, and there was, I don't know, it's just been a little cautious over here. So we're all back and being careful, but yeah, so back in the process.
It's upstate. It's like 60 miles north of Grand Central.
Right.
I think right. Newburgh, New York. It's also kind of known as the sixth borough, I heard. So what's up?
Yeah, it's kind of was becoming there's a lot of Brooklyn people now, which is great. I mean, even before COVID, I mean, there's a community here, and you know, it's right across from Beacon, so it's you can bring the train, and you know, there used to be a ferry. I kind of don't know, that was working a little bit, but it's a great community here. It really is. Artists.
Well, yeah, there's tons of artists up there and a lot of stuff going on. But there's also, speaking of the ferry, there's the commuter ferry that goes back and forth between Beacon to Newburgh, but that was always like during commuter hours, so it would be like 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. But what I really was interested in, someone told me recently that Newburgh had a ferry to New York City.
What?
I know, wouldn't you love to?
Oh my God, I love the history, finding out these things about Newburgh. You know, it's just, I mean, there's so much history here. Ellsworth Kelly was born here.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, what? It's like, so you know, little tidbits, but
I like that tidbit. You know, tap in a little
abstraction history in Newburgh.
Color fields, you know.
Color fields, yeah, totally, yeah. No,
that's amazing. And so, are you then based in Newburgh, or do you commute from the city, or how are you?
I commute. Actually, about 2 years ago, I moved up near New Paltz. I'm a little south in a town called Gardner. So it's great. It takes about 20 minutes drive down here, which is kind of the 20-minute rule around here, upstate.
Yeah.
You know, it's within that. So, and it's kind of nice. I live out in the apple orchards, and it's nice and peaceful, but you know, I have New Paltz as like a community, but to also come back down here where it's a little bit more like Brooklyn, there's a little more art scene, it's great. And then it's also really close to the train if I want to go into the city. So yeah, I love it. So I'm grateful to be up here too right now. I miss Brooklyn, I do, but I go back, you know, before COVID, I was going regularly in into the city. So
yeah, well, I think, as they are saying, it was the last thing about Newburgh, but just like, or even upstate. I mean, so many folks are leaving the city, as so they say, according to other real estate agents, and otherwise people are saying, like, actually there was, the springtime brought more sales and people moving out of the city because there was a moratorium on selling homes, and real estate agents weren't showing homes. And then
right.
the barrage came because that there was drought.
Right. Yeah.
We'll
Yeah,
see.
it's changing. Of course, we don't know anything, right? Everything is changing. And so, who knows? We'll be in lockdown probably next week. Hopefully not.
Let's hope not. I know.
I'll
Well,
lock myself in here.
did you get a lot of work done during the lockdown, or what? Were you?
Yeah.
What you?
I did and I didn't. I mean, I actually was traveling right when the lockdown hit. I was traveling with my family in the Dominican Republic, actually. And so to come back like on the 17th when everybody was, I think it was the day after or the day right before, everything and people coming in or going out was so it was kind of crazy. But it was hard for me to work right at first. I was just, I couldn't get to my studio. Everything was here. I just kind of took some time off, but maybe like a month into it, I started setting up a place at home and mainly doing drawings. I'm used to working big and having, a lot more room than I do at home. So, but you make it happen, whatever space you have. So,
Absolutely.
And I got really into gardening.
Oh, yeah.
I got some dirt under these fingers, fingernails. So yeah, that was nice. Actually, it really was nice. I mean, I don't know how that's going to affect the work, but I mean, just being able to be outside and, reflect, so,
So when you were gardening, having to work smaller, having to basically work with what you got and your resources and things, I guess we'll kind of get to some of these drawings a little later, but you started off kind of with a bang. I remember your story. It goes something along the lines like, you were an architect, a professional working in the field in California. Was San Francisco?
Right in the Bay Area. Yep.
Area.
Yeah, San Francisco.
Wow. And then all of a sudden you just kind of like did a 180. You're like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to be an artist.
Well, I was actually already, I was both, I was painting. I had not really a career. I mean, my career was architecture. But, I was in some group shows and San Francisco's a smaller scene, but there's some great work and art there. But I felt like if I was going to make I mean, I was getting to the point where I was kind of selling some work and getting a little recognition. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm really going to have to do this, go to New York, So I started thinking about grad school and I was applying. I got into CCA. I was like, I can't stay there, or I can go to the other coast and just really hit it big. I don't know. California is great and I miss it so much, but it's also easy, at least for me, to get pretty comfortable. So I needed a little like fire under my, so I came out here and got into SVA and I kind of gave up everything, gave up the full-time job,
Yeah.
the money I'd saved up and went to grad school. And
yeah. Well, that's when you take the leap, right?
Yeah.
It's the moment where you can trust in yourself. And I know it's so corny, but I always imagine myself literally jumping from a cliff and working on flying whenever I change my trajectory in life. And it's not like I've been doing that a lot, like on a regular, not a habitual like life.
Right.
But kind of like when you find something that you really want to be passionate and dedicate yourself to, and you do have to trust yourself and your surroundings, and corny as it sounds, just really believe you can fly. Because if you don't take that absolute jump, A, you'll never know, but B, that really important newness of experience where you're learning new things and you basically slow down time.
Right.
You know, and by slowing down time when you're learning new things, you immerse yourself in new things. I'm quantum physics style, feel like you get younger, you're more inspired.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, going back or going to grad school at an older age, also just thinking about that and feeling younger, I mean, it was great. I mean, not that there was really any feeling of, ageism or anything, but it was just, to be in with younger people, being in New York. I'd been working, the architecture firm I worked for in San Francisco had an office in New York. So I would come back and forth, but only be here for like a week. It wasn't like I could really do much except work. So, and I'd been coming to see Freeze and things like that, but to actually come here and live and actually do art was just, yeah. It was a big step, and it was also intense, but I needed that. I needed it so badly.
Totally. You got to wrap it up, and you're not working for someone else. You work for yourself.
Yeah, I work for myself, and I just put everything on the line. So it's like, let's do this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's no way else to do but to succeed. At least, at least for a new experience.
And I had so many great. SVA was great. There were great instructors, that I got to study under. I mean, Marilyn Minter, and just
under Marilyn Minter.
Yeah, it was great, and just lots of people. I mean, so it couldn't have been better. So
that's really exciting. And so then you had just a giant solo show at Beers.
No, I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better, so I went to grad school, and SVA has this one where they did, I think they still do it, but they have a booth at Pulse when it was in New York. So my work was shown at the booth at Pulse, New York, my second year. It got shown. So Kurt Beers saw it, and at least that's what I was under the impression of. And so, I got a call about having a show. Kurt Beers London is obviously in London, but
right. I mean, and
I think they had a booth at Volta, and they were just out walking around and.
Maybe it was Untitled because
Untitled.
They usually show it Untitled. And they always color their walls, and word on the street. And I'm thinking I'll get in trouble for slander or whatever. But word on the street with Beards is that they typically show only dudes. So it's pretty dope that they're like Ruth Freeman.
Hey, that's great.
Well, I mean, maybe now they'll diversify their roster, but if you go on, you can kind of see because I've known a couple of folks that have shown there or tried to show there, say them. But it's a reputable gallery, extremely well-selling and very connected gallery to London, no less.
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, talk about being under not pressure, but it was just like coming out of school, and I mean, talking about professional practice. I had to learn like quickly how to not look like I didn't know what I was doing, but
not put alligator clips on the back of your paintings.
How do you wrap a painting and get a crate? What? It's like, I'm just used to putting these stacking them up and they kind of stick together. No, but I mean, anyway, but Kurt was super patient, and it was kind of one of those things where I think actually someone was going to have a show and they were rearranging. So he's like, this is in 2 weeks, so let's, what can you show us? And I was like, well, I have this thesis show I just presented. So it was basically my thesis show went to.
Wow.
And so, it was amazing. And I got a lot of recognition from it. It was a dream come true. So created
and shipped expedited the work and the plane probably.
So, and I have family that's over there, so I had a place to stay and people to go to the show with, and so.
Good. You weren't just standing in the corner alone, biting your nails.
I'm the artist. Oh my God.
Better, you could, bring your cousin or a brother or someone male friend and be like, "Are you the artist?"
Right.
Right over here.
Right.
And it just happened too many times. I had to call it out. But the fact is, I think you have some images of some of the show from here, right? Like kind of on the top of your deck.
Yeah, let me see. I can do this share screen thing. Okay. Oh, why is it saying that? Okay, just a second already. Okay, guess because we were going through it before I started. So yeah, this is the show basically. And my screen has a bunch of stuff on it, so hopefully you can see better than I can. There's some stuff, but yeah, this was the name of my thesis show at SVA. It was basically called "Can It Be More Awkward?" a hashtag, because I was interested at the time of like this digital drawing. From my architectural background of like, so to go back, I started architecture in the mid 90s, and that was when we were going from doing hand drafting to using CAD and using 3D rendering. And there was this whole thing that happened that the built environment really just kind of got changed. I mean, we were so not used to using computers, and we were putting too much light in building, too many windows. I don't know. It was just, things were really hard. And it was also really hard to communicate with the contractors because we were just using this whole new tool. I mean, this was just kind of my feel about it.
I've never heard that before. That's interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, if you think about, I was also at that time, that was like when, Frank Gehry, the deconstructionists, which I'm sure was going on in art too, but I was learning about it through architecture, was they were starting to use computers, but everything was on paper, and it was not built. But I think even when someone like Frank Gehry started to build something, it was just this weird time. So I was kind of capturing that about like how things were almost too specific in drawings, and there was no middle ground to kind of leave space for things to get fixed, if that makes sense, while it's being built. Yeah, so let's see, why is this not working? I'm trying to move through these, sorry. Well, I guess I can just do, ew. Well, anyway, these are a few more of the images that were in the show. Oh, there it is. So yeah, that's kind of what Can It Be More Awkward? Because I think it was just kind of like I was making these pieces and not necessarily thinking about compositionally what they were going to come out to be, just kind of really process related to like just taking what I was drawing on a computer, on an iPad, and putting some more, gestural backgrounds, and then but I was also using tools that were kind of like these touchless tools like airbrush, and was, highly influenced by like Jeff Elrod, who was doing that kind of work as well. After the show, so these, I kind of put these in. Do you want me to just kind of go through these, or do you?
Yeah, well, yeah, let's do
that's,
I have a question for you though, because I've noticed some really fun titling.
Oh, yes.
On.
Okay.
And I'm curious, like, can it be more awkward? Is the show itself, handy as a shirt pocket? I saw a couple other drag. How do you name your work?
Well, it's gone through different phasing, really. I'd say the first one's from the show and from the work in school. It had to do with anything to do with like computer moves, I mean, so, I don't know, I should have, there's one exception to every rule, right? I mean, the handy as a shirt pocket is just the saying that my dad used to always say. So I don't know, that was, I can't put that one in with this, that was just a random one. But then they also started turning into, okay, there was two different ones. This one was a series where there are these rhymes, and I still actually kind of do that. And it has to do with, because basically there was these two dichotomies, right, of like digital elements and then a gestural element that I'm combining in these. So there was a game I used to play with my mom. It was called Stinkery Pinkery, and it's like I think I had like a stack this big of like all these different rhymes, And so I just kind of started using those as like a way to document the work. So they kind of have some room. But as I went and as I've gone, those rhymes have actually turned into rhymes that have to do with something that's happened maybe kind of in the studio while I'm working on them, or, you know, maybe in the news or in the, you know, something that kind of documents the time of when they're being made. So,
and just to be clear, I know you continue to talk about, you know, the digital meets the analog, or, you know, this back and forth. These are all acrylic on canvas.
correct.
The process involves a digital hand from the sketching.
Correct. Yeah.
Then moving into, you know, the acrylic on paper or canvas, whatever the case. And just the moiré effect at times, especially in this poly solid, this, you know, it just buzzes so much, and the kind of the accuracy, or that architect's hand of drafting kind of comes out in some of these, whether it's masking techniques or, you know, just this patterns, line and quality of the paint that you've put down.
Right. Yeah, they, okay, first of all, I'm going to tell you that these titles came from commands from AutoCAD. That's another little series I did. So they're these really weird, like, anyway. So, but yeah, back to the moiré patterns. And even though those first series that were at Beers, were a little looser and didn't have the straight lines, I had been playing around with tape, and like the tape is kind of like my grid. It's like this thing that like I put down in order to, I have a perfection obsession, and that's probably from architecture or having this straight line. And it's something, it's almost like a comforting thing to like put this in, or it fixes things, you know, it's kind of like the fix of the unstraight or the whatever. So it actually allows me in a way to let loose on another layer that comes in at the end, which is a big gestural layer. So it started out as being a tool to kind of have this interface between the two dichotomies. And also lines have to do with, like, you know, computer screen, you know, or digital or screens or whatever. But it really ended up being more of a process thing for me, if this is answering your question.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it was a question. I have way of loaded statements, so.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's still in my work, obviously, as you can see. It also does something that that I'm getting more interested in, as far as like illusionistic kind of elements to the work, which, you know, these straight lines, they're very straight, but they also, okay, for one, they, you know, make things look straighter than they are. But they also start to play with the color. And maybe that's that vibration that you're talking about, or, you know, when you think about, you know, the art kind of thing. But, you know, and I'm sure it's Joseph Alber's study of, like, you know, there's colors that show up that aren't even there, you know, because there's this vibration.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it also happens in this series that I'm showing, because of the blurred line and the straight line. It really started to have a play with not only the color, but the, you know, the foreground and background.
Right.
Because there's, I don't know if you can tell on the screen, but there's actually colors that show up on, when you look at these, that are not there, like some reds and some that I never even put in there. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, just from the retina to that phenomenon.
Yeah.
Like when you look at something intensely and then look away, you see the opposite of, you know, the kind of like an additional, what is it, additive color, just the CMYK spectrum.
Right. Yeah.
And so, speaking of color, though, Susie Surek actually has a great question here. It's just gorgeous work.
Hi, Susie.
Can you speak about the color a little bit more? Say, you know, a lot of these that we've seen thus far are predominantly monochromatic, or there's two layers of monochrome coupled. So you're working with different, like, here's a tertiary composition, another tertiary composition, but what, how are you choosing your colors, or how are you inspired to, and yeah, just speak more about color.
Color is always like that one main element, right, to talk about. And I think it usually starts out to be something that represents kind of a backlit screen, with the digital aesthetic, I guess. That's how it kind of started out. But I think now, as I get into this process more, and you'll see it as I go along, it's more about trying to choose colors that I know will kind of give an illusionistic effect. It's not really necessarily in these pieces, but I guess maybe the one behind me. But as I do these more, I'm learning to control that a little more, or control the outcome. But it also really just comes down to, like, color is what brings everybody in. I mean, that's the first thing, bam, you can put onto something to get attention. And I think, really it just comes down to a pleasurable experience. And like, if it's something that it usually is, like, it's kind of like the titles. It might be something that's in my life right now, or going on, that I might bring it in there. But I would say it started out mainly with, just trying to represent a digital backlit color. So.
Right. So it's almost the hue was almost inconsequential to the actual layering and replication of this digital sketch onto the page. Can you go forward a little bit more?
Yes.
From here, flat shot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, go to another.
PC in Wizard. See.
Oh yeah. So PC in Wizard is another one of those. I'm sorry. I don't know why this is not working. It always works when you're practicing. PC in Wizard is, again, another one of those CAD commands that you type in when you're typing, But so this was where I started taking them larger, and this is where scale really starts to take in, because I'm still using the same size tape. But I wanted to see what would happen if I used that tape, and what it would do to the backgrounds and the foregrounds. And I think scale is really important too, as far as like how we're looking at things digitally, and trying to think about, what if one thing stays constant, like our screen, and everything else changes, and how we're learning to look at things on these small little screens, and our brains are learning to make them bigger in our thoughts or whatever. But I think that was kind of, and I'm still doing that too, like to think about how those elements.
Well, one thing that I noticed too from 2016, from the solo show, and having earned your credential of an MFA, and then moving into 2017, 18, they were becoming more layered and developed. And as you already mentioned, the presentation is kind of in a chronological order. And it's nice to see how they are developing, and they've much more mark making in those multiple layers. How do you, basically, I mean, this is kind of a wackadoodle question, but it's like, are you intuitively working from layer to layer to layer to layer, or are you planning every layer out to find that finished painting? Or again, do you trust your intuition to within your sketching of layers? And also, like, for instance, how many layers are in this particular dreary theory?
So pretty much all the work has, I think, let's see, 3 layers. The only thing I really know is a constant is the computer drawing, which I think can see by the straight edges on this. So the one behind me is in process. That's pretty much the digital layer.
Right.
The backgrounds that you see that are kind of behind the tape, which is a second layer. And then there's the gestural layer, which is the color that's kind of, I don't know if you see it in the background or the foreground, but it's the more gestural hand. That actually goes on last. There's 3 layers. I think that what I do that is, gosh, I don't know, it's almost like rhythm, right? It's like I take those 3 layers, I'm keeping those as constants. And like in this series, I started to make that 1 layer, the rhythm of like the finger painting, I call it, like, basically on a screen, different scale, more detailed, more racing, just playing with the depth of field. I'm sorry, I forgot your question, but like, I guess it was about layers, right? Like, how do I know? I don't know how it's gonna look until I take all the tape and all the Frisket off, except for the form of the computer drawing. And that's my intuition. That's like this structured intuition that like, I'm starting to learn how those dance together, they play together. But it's that structural, probably architectural background that it's a built piece. It's, does that make sense? Is that?
Definitely. So it's kind of a mix match of your intuition, but also the 25, 30 years you've been practicing as an artist or working architecture and otherwise.
Right. And I'm starting now to really start looking more at the I keep saying gestural layer, but the actual hand touched layer that goes on last, as you'll see soon. But this was one, and these last few are ones that I did when I was at the CMYK project. And it was kind of nice. I hadn't had a studio very big, and so I don't know if anybody knows about CMYK, but they're basically these studios that are in an old barn. And so it's pretty rough, but they're pretty big. And so not that these are huge, but I just had more elbow room, and I kind of feel like these changed and shifted things a little bit. Thinking about color too. This one's less monochromatic, starting to actually use green a little bit. I tend to use more blues. I don't know why, but as I bring up a very big blue one.
That brings me to a very short and sweet story about studio visit that I was with an artist who's really nervous about the studio visit because they're getting a solo show. And it was this was the moment, it's the placement on the calendar moment where how ready are you moment with the gallery comes in. And they kind of pass, going through stuff a little bit too fast to really like know that they're liking it. And then finally, the gallerist just turns to the mid-career artist and says, yeah, so blue horizontals, because
that's what sells. Oh my God.
Now, I'm always looking around. I'm going to where's like, where's the sail wall? Where's the blue horizontal? Because the blue horizontal will be in the worst wall possible. The yellow and orange piece is going to be like the largest piece and the best wall possible. That's the sail wall. You got to convince.
What is up with the blue?
And then with the blue, everyone's just like, love it.
Love it. Wow. Yeah. Well, this must be like I don't know, fantasy. I don't know. This one's full of blue. I don't know.
Keep making those blue paintings, Ruth. I don't know.
All right.
Do you notice through your sales, like what does sell more than what doesn't? Or
I mean, I'm gonna tell you that actually I've had that conversation about blue paintings with a gallery in Florida. Because maybe it's where you live. I don't know. Or maybe, if you live in the country, you want to know there's water somewhere, or maybe in Florida, you're just used to having the water. I don't know. I mean, but they kind of did say this would sell more, but it's hard to, when someone tells you that, you're just like, no, I don't want to know that.
Let me make my work how I want.
Let me make my work and don't put that into my...
there's a blue painting.
There it is. Actually, this is the painting I just showed. I just thought it'd be interesting to show a little bit of the process since we were just showing. Yeah. Like, this is the last layer that goes on. So, and then I basically take like 70% of the painting off, and that's what's left. So it kind of puts me in this position of almost being a printer, you know, or not a screen printer type printer, but a machine printer, you know, like it's almost like this in between, like I'm taking things off almost like, you know, I've been interested in always trying to be in the middle of like creating something and then outputting it, you know. And I feel like that does come from the process of architecture, because you're always designing on paper and then building something, but that middle ground, you know, that in between is just, I don't know.
The active part too is interesting, because as you mentioned yourself, you really don't know how the painting's going to look until you're done with it.
Right.
So there's like these, not just like physical layers, layer and layer, but there's these kind of ethereal layers of surprise for you, as well as, you know, a determined control, and, you know, the layering of the different, just the painting's attributes itself. I really appreciate that surprise in the redaction, like you're taking away that which you add at the very end. And then when you're adding in the very end, it's just like, it, as you said, gestural and kind of wild, and this finger painting, as you said.
Right. Yeah, I usually have a couple of them going, because, you know, it's I sometimes go back to like the straight edge and putting that tape on, and then like go and have like a big bucket full of paint with the paintbrushes doing the last layer on a couple of others, just to kind of balance it out. But I don't know. It's just, I guess. So, the reason I'm trying, so this is the drawing behind me. This goes into a story about how I got a commission last, I guess it's almost been a year ago, to do the Facebook AIR program, which is Artist in Residency. And they had seen this piece and had asked if that was something that they could, you know, asked me to use it as, you know, a model or something, you know, for this one area. So, you know, everybody gets a wall. You usually get a month to make the piece. My group, there were 5 of us, we only had 2 weeks. So this was a mock-up. So it's really weird, because, you know, from going from painting and then actually going back to this whole kind of architectural process of like, Facebook wants to know what you're going to put up on the wall. It's not like, oh, we love your work, we're just going to give you a wall, do what you want. They want a proposal. They want to see what you're going to put.
And that's your beautiful studio right there.
There it is. I mean, I'm
part of it,
but that was when it was a lot cleaner. I think that was Open Studios or something. So,
but the work on the wall then is the mock-up for the Facebook Air, of which you got to go in there.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, and you said usually you get a month, but
yeah.
But well, you have a video or something. Let's.
Yeah, I have a little, which is kind of in process, so the audio is not working. So I'm just going to kind of talk over it.
Yeah.
Where'd it go? Here it is. So yeah, it's like, let's see if I can get this to where it's not. Okay. So yeah, so this was the piece, and they give you a walkthrough before you start, and then you go and you show them what you're going to do. You kind of do some actually architectural drawings, but this, yeah, so that was the piece, and I started putting it on this wall.
You put vinyl up first?
I did. I mean, I've only done one mural before this one, and it was kind of like trying to figure out, so I basically used the process that I do, and just took it larger. So yeah, I was using like this sign painters for skip paper. So yeah, and had a couple of assistants, amazing friends, help. Did everything, did the tape, all that.
I love the cherry picker going up with it.
Oh my God, this was so fun. So my 2 friends helped me with this. I mean, it was in the budget to have assistants. And so, yeah, we had to learn how to use that thing, but it was pretty cool to make something that big and to think about scale. And, you know, that's where I am now, like trying to think, how, you know, making these things bigger. And yeah, so it was hard, and there was all these contractors around, you know, it was hustle bustle. This was one night that we were all by ourselves, but yeah, it was a good experience. They were pretty worried, because my paintings, you can't really tell what they're going to be until like I take everything off. So they kept thinking I wasn't going to get done. So they were coming by, like everybody else was done, and I was like, Still look kind of like a white wall, but
Ah,
anyway, yeah. But
they're kind of trying to impression you to finish faster. I love that you
yeah.
have that shirt on, working with
Oh my
the
God, is it striped?
striped shirt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically gave you a
Yeah.
scissor lift and everything, and then I mean it's not too hard to figure out how to work, but you had a giant wall.
Yeah, and that was the smallest one. There was a couple of other people that, yeah. I actually proposed to do this one that was 2 walls, and I don't even know how I thought I was going to finish that because this was hard enough to get done. But yeah, so and it's there, it's permanent. You know, it's not open to the public, unfortunately, but you know, it's, I think, I don't know, COVID hit, and I don't know if you can actually have people go and see it, but they were going to have an opening, but that didn't happen. So,
So okay, so this went up in like February or January?
well, no, it was way before COVID, but they were thinking, I mean, I don't know their schedule. They were going to do something, yeah, maybe around February or March for an opening, and you know, it never happened. So.
Oh, so satisfying pulling that tape off.
Yeah. Everybody, even everybody would come by and help me. It's great. So, yeah, I don't know if it's going to show I think yeah, there's the final one. So, yeah. But there's some great artists in that building. It's fun I feel honored that I got to do that. So,
wow. Where is the building?
It's in.
You signed an NDA.
It's in NoHo, I guess. Like, what's that square that over by it's like kind of between the East Village. It's NoHo. I mean, it's, gosh, I haven't been to New York in a while. I'm forgetting my districts, but yeah, it's kind of a hidden building. But so this was a mural. I don't know. You want me to keep going through these, or? Yeah, this was another mural. This was the first mural I kind of did by myself, a little smaller, but it was at Penn State. This was a show curated by Mark Joshua Epstein and Stina, I hope I say her last name, Patinen, last name right. But yeah, it was fun. It was in this gallery it's weird. It's kind of in a educational building, but it's open to the public. And there was a big snowstorm, so I got snowed in there and did it for like 2 nights and learned how to make a mural. So it's already gone. I mean, it wasn't permanent, but Alison Kuo was in that. I think she's on Artfare.
Oh, yeah.
SVA person. Hein Ko, Denise Treisman. You know, so.
Oh yeah.
It was a fun show. But there's a wall. Scale definitely played a role. I was using smaller tape with this one, but oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. Yeah.
And now we're getting into some of this more 2020 work, eh?
Yeah, so this is kind of what I've been working on now, and I think you can see it's like, yeah, kind of the 3 elements of the work are kind of, you know, changing as far as like, I've been doing a lot of like more expression gestural painting and trying to figure out how that's relating to these, you know, kind of bigger computer elements.
Yeah.
This is kind of in the middle of that one, another process shot. It's funny, I'm showing you pictures of my studio, but I can't really show you around my studio. But, yeah, these are some that were at Pulse Miami last year, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know how we're doing on time. I hope we're okay.
We're great.
Oh, cool.
15 more minutes.
Yeah, and then now I'm actually trying to start how I like bringing things back after I've done doing like this taping and so forth. So there's some things that are happening as far as like thinking about each element of these paintings and how, after doing the murals and so forth, how to maybe bring them into 3-dimensional objects and, you know, I don't know, 3D printing. I don't know if I'm going to go there, but you know, it's just the thoughts of a pandemic, during a pandemic. Yeah. But
wow. So you're really thinking of going 3D. How would that work, Ruth? What are you envisioning? What materials are you envisioning?
don't know. I mean, I really, I mean, I'm just talking really present moment of my thoughts, but I feel like scale is really more what I'm thinking about. I don't know about like what shapes and so forth, but I think there's just this idea of like, I really am thinking about this idea of us getting stuck right now with looking at everything so small.
Yeah.
That I almost feel like I need to make something is stronger, you know, like you just have to have something that's stronger to come across, and not for any other reason except just to communicate, you know, across our screens. And like, I mean, my work is like, I think we've talked about this, I call it kind of digital regurgitation, because, you know, they start out on a screen, they get brought out into the world to be made, and then we look at them on a screen again, you know, and you know, how we read things. I mean, that's the question for a long time, you know, how we look at things now that everything's, I mean, even with photographs, I guess before too, right? And then seeing something in real life. But where's it going? And yeah, so.
Well, I mean, just thinking about your quandary, you know, just how you want to be able to communicate or do something more bold. Maybe I'm misinterpreting some of what you're saying. I just follow up with a question like, you know, abstractions can feel so, I mean, I started off by saying safe, right? So you know,
It was saying what? I'm sorry.
safe.
Oh yeah.
You know, they're not, you know, politically in your face. I mean, when you're working with representational elements, whether painting or sculpture, or all the things, all the mediums, would you consider straying from abstractions and potentially, you know, having elements within your work that could turn into kind of a curious mystery in that first layer? Wait, is that a landscape? Wait, is that Statue of Liberty back there?
Right.
You know, just like the illusion of something.
Yeah. You know, and there are a lot of, I mean, artists, I'm thinking of painters that, you know, kind of do that, that do it so well. And like, that I even, you know, I mean, I think even just as a young kid, I feel like, you know, we kind of work off what we did visually developing. I don't know. I've always felt like I've abstracted things. I guess you also always fear that like things are going to show up in your abstractions that you didn't know were going to show up. But yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of goes along the lines of like this idea of like, now that we're looking at things on screen and kind of maybe there's a misunderstanding in communication now and things that are going on. But yeah, like, I don't know, like maybe, are you thinking maybe also like, yeah, just almost like subliminal kind of things, or yeah.
Maybe you want something to be like more in your face or more I'm not so sure exactly how to encapsulate what, you know, you're thinking in terms of like a bolder communication, because the op art style, I mean, not that this categorized into pure op art, and obviously it's a lot more than that. How, if you were to do three-dimensional elements or encourage folks to communicate more about these works, or the digital replications of these works also feel like, you know, it does feel like a Photoshop painting. Yeah, it absolutely can fool the viewers. One of the reasons why I started off saying like, just want to be sure these are all acrylic paintings.
Right.
And I wonder if you could play with that idea a little bit. You know, the work, your work is so clearly defined in the digital realm, yet when you are with it personally, the scale, the actual hand in the paint, all of that stuff, like most things, it's just more valuable as a viewer to be in front of the work than to make such a quick read off something that may, if not reading the details, the medium line, folks would just be like, you know, the same old thing. Like, okay, you add a couple layers, da, 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 da.
Right.
So I wonder how you might be able to. And you're doing some of this, I think, with the drip and getting the hand more
Right.
obvious, with maybe even some blemishes at times where the masking doesn't exactly hold the looseness of the acrylic. See how it seeps under sometimes, and you're like, "Duh."
Right. Yeah. I think that's just almost like a shout out of like, these aren't digital. They are like, they do have a hand touch to them. And I mean, I maybe just early spoke about like what I'm thinking about doing as far as like 3-dimensional stuff, because the only thing I can really kind of say is that I'm just feeling this need to, and it's probably just being more isolated, to communicate something that's within the subject I am interested in as far as digital forms.
Yeah. I mean,
and
the idea of like glitches, some representational like old school glitches or like video games.
Right. I mean, I've even been, I didn't know I was going to be doing this on this. It's just like, I'll just tell you what I've been thinking about. But I mean, even just being out in nature, it's just like thinking about taking things to the extreme of more like, really even just like, sculpture and nature and digital things. And, I saw a great image of I think they're aware of it now, but there's some farm, and I cannot think of the farm upstate that like does aerials of their garden, and they plant lettuce in these amazing, like, they don't mean to, but they're in the rows, and as they pick them, they just happen to be seen from these aerials that like they look so digital. They look like these like these glitches like in the photo, and I wish I had one to show, but it's just like, oh my God, these are just farmers picking their lettuce, and they're making something that's this reference. It seems like, at least I'm seeing it. No, other people have said it too, but
it's like inspo. I mean, it's Ruth Freeman inspo.
Yeah, right. So, maybe I need to move back to Brooklyn and get out of this country.
Well, I know I've been full of questions and comments, and I'm hoping anyone that's listening right now might be interested in asking Ruth some questions about her process or about her history in working in this way.
Should I take this off so I can
I
forget that you can't see, right? So.
And then of course, this will be recorded and put up on the YouTube in case anyone missed anything. We've got some nice comments on the chat.
Oh, thanks. I don't know why I can't see. Can I open the chat? Oh, yeah. There you go. Oh, yeah. Right. Learning. So. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Nice. Yeah, it's fun to share. I mean, isn't this important? I mean, gosh, I miss having I miss having the discussions about art. That's the biggest thing I've missed during all this pandemic time. So I think it's great that you're doing this.
Oh, thanks, Ruth. I really appreciate the artists that volunteer to go at a tete-a-tete about their work with me. Sometimes it's all over the place, so the things that we talk about, but hopefully always really focus on the work. Folks are saying they like to hear about your process. Cool. And and you must go through a lot of paint. You know, I'm thinking about the masking and then pulling off all the materials, and then just kind of like, what do you do with that paint? Kind of imagining these balls of wadded mats. It was going to be your sculptures.
Totally. Yeah, we had open studios at CMYK. And I think I had put all the balls of tape together, and so they did. They were little sculptures in the barn next to the paintings. But it's funny. It's weird. They deflate after a while, though. They take on their own shapes. They kind of because of the elasticity of the acrylic. But
I wonder if you could like somehow shellac them or
right.
I mean, it's evil. Resin is evil, but dip it in some resin. Really,
right.
You throw it all up, or even cast something like that. I don't know if you can really cast. Well, maybe people do. People have cast paper before.
Stop the motion of the process.
There you go.
Yeah.
But really to think about a three-dimensional aspect of these works, they already are so distinctly pushing the field of vision in relationship to those layers.
Right.
That it would be really exciting to see a little sculpture in relationship to some of these loose forms and controlled lines and
I'd be adding another element to my three, but it's kind of, again, like, I don't know, I'm inspired by like musicians so much, and the rhythm and things, and like just adding one other thing, or it's just that typical. But there's already a lot of play in them as far as depth of field, so
definitely. Well, if there aren't any more questions, I'm going to close up shop here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Susie Surek says, so curious hearing about the relationship between CAD, layering, and even garden design.
I know. Susie knows. She's gardener too.
Well, thank
Artist
you.
gardener.
Artist gardener.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, all the things, roundabout things, back and forth.
Yeah.
And we will continue watching you on Artfare, putting stuff out there. You've got some great work on there. Some of the work we saw tonight is on Artfare app, and and keeping on in that studio. It's such a warm and
glad to be back.
Yeah. It looks excessively neat.
Well, it's funny. I am a little bit of a neat freak, but I do clean up when I have guests. So I didn't have to give you any refreshments, but I lucked out on that. But I hope you had your own.
Your own refreshments. But
thanks, Carolina.
Thank you so much. And next week is Megan Kotz, a sculpture artist out of LA. And a lot about genetic memory and all sorts of cool things in her work. So if you miss any of this, please check us out on YouTube and all sorts of, I think we're like on 20 something, if not more, of these artist interviews, talks, and so on and so forth. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Ruth.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Thanks so much. Bye.